Alright, welcome back to another episode of our Axis and Allies gameplay. And when we left off, we had recaptured a bunch of provinces over here on the eastern seaboard. And Germany is now looking to fend off against Russia as they are making a very aggressive advance towards this area. We'd actually left them with only a couple of territories. And Germany looks like they are being spread a bit thin, if we're being honest. They've now got to keep in mind this assault from the US troops up here. Luckily, that means that the US isn't really focusing on me at this point, which is good. Alright, so nothing super eventful for me. We did end up losing this area of Yunnan again, which is a little bit frustrating. But we now have a bunch of transports that we can use to funnel troops in here, so I'm not too concerned about retaking that area. We've got a bunch of IPC to work with here, so what I am going to do is I think we should purchase a Crusader or a cruiser. And then the rest of that we should funnel into some units here. So let's go ahead and get an artillery. And then an additional, so 3 artillery and then an additional infantry and a tank. Because we can then start funneling our units across here using our different transports. So in terms of combat, what we're going to need to do is we're going to load up our transport with an infantry and with a tank. And then we're going to dump them over here in Yunnan. We're then going to grab these 2 transports, bring them over here, fill up with... We'll fill up one with an infantry and an artillery, and the other with an infantry and a tank. And then we'll dump them over here as well. So that brings 6 units over here. We can then use these 2 battleships as amphibious assault. We can go ahead and bring these 2 in to help with this fight as well. And we can also bring in our bombers. We can bring in this bomber to that fight, we can bring in this bomber to that fight, and we can bring in this bomber to that fight. And from there, I'm not too concerned about leaving all of my fighters down here, so I will probably move a bunch of them on my non-combat to make up for that. Though I will probably end up scrambling this fighter back over here to help with fortification and defense. So really the only thing that I can do is take on this Yunnan area, at least on this turn. So we will go ahead and make that our combat phase. Alright, hopefully both of our bomber and our both of our battleships can roll some hits here and take out these tanks, which they have. Certainly always nice to see that. And they're probably going to return at least 1 hit, but they do end up getting 2, so we'll take those on these infantry. And that will allow us the province of Yunnan back. So for our non-combats, I am moving this artillery up here. I'm landing all of my bombers that were used in this fight here as well. I can't move any of these units, but I have gone ahead and moved this fighter over here to help with Buryatia, and I've moved 3 of my 4 fighters from here up there as well. So that's all we're going to do on our non-combat move. And now it's time to go ahead and mobilize our troops. So we'll go ahead and drop all of our artillery here, this infantry, this tank, and then this cruiser will go ahead and land here with the rest of our navy, and that'll conclude our placement for this turn. Well, Germany isn't looking too hot. They lost a bunch of units over here, which is territories and units, which is quite unfortunate. They're also facing a lot of pressure from the US here on the Western Europe seaboard, which is quite unfortunate for them. Though they were able to regain France, and hopefully, yep, they were able to get Northwestern Europe back as well. This is a bit of a hairier fight where there's a lot of stuff going on here, but they were able to retake Karelia, which is definitely a point in their favor. But Russia has regained a lot of their space up here, which is a bit problematic. Alright, so we had a bit of a casualty. What happened is we had left our 2 battleships and 3 transports here relatively unguarded, and I did not account for a bomber from Alaska and then the 3 fighters from here. So we suffered a very, very heavy loss there with our 2 battleships and all 3 of our transports. So at this point, I've got to rebuild at least 2 transports so I can continue to funnel my units over. And the rest of that, I think I'm going to allocate to an extra fighter and then some infantry, because that's about all I can really feasibly muster at this point. So this is going to be the only fight of this turn, because I've got to get rid of this pesterment from these fighters here, and I'm probably going to take some heavy casualties on it. But luckily, it's only going to be 1 round, because we can completely take out those fighters here. And luckily, or fortunately, we are only losing 1 unit on that turn of combat. So that gives us a nicely decided victory there. Honestly, those fighters were hanging out for way too long anyway. So these bombers I am going to take back to the province I took them from. We're going to go ahead and land this fighter over here with this tank in China to help this German tank defend Sichuan. I don't need as many fighters up here as I thought I did, so we'll move 2 of them into here. And that's about all I can do non-combat wise. So we're going to go ahead and make that our final part of that move. Alright, so Germany is making a couple of moves here. Really trying to reinstate some of their dominance. They've got a nice little fleet of tanks going on up here, but they're really facing a lot of pressure. And looks like they we actually lost the fight here. Alright, so it's now our turn to start moving some stuff again. And we can gain an easy IPC over here just by moving this artillery in, which is nice. We've really got to bulk up on some more infantry. And then let's go ahead and get a bomber and a fighter for our remaining purchases here. And that's going to be all we do for new buys. Alright, so for our combat moves, we're going to make as big of a run here as we can on India. I'm bringing in 3 bombers, which I know is risky where they have this anti-aircraft gun, as well as this fighter. Hopefully, I don't take hardly any casualties from that. But then we will move all 5 of these units in, hopefully not take too many casualties, and not only take the city of Calcutta, but be able to fend it off as well from any counterattack that might be incurred. So right off the bat, we've got some defense coming in from our anti-aircraft, and it looks like we are going to take at least one hit. I'm happy to take that on this fighter, because I'd rather have this firepower remaining for these other troops that we have to take on. And unfortunately, no hits from our artillery and our infantry combo. And no hits from our tanks either. I can't afford to be doing that. And please give me hits from these bombers. Luckily, every single one of them hit, so that will detract from the casualties we have to be concerned of for our next turn. One hit here, so let's go ahead and take that on an artillery. And hopefully it's just one more hit, which it's not. We'll take those on these two. And hopefully I don't have to lose another unit on this next turn. So we do have that fighter taken down. And they are going to return some fire. And as much as this hurts, I need to have these two tanks there to defend. So we're going to take it on one of our planes, which is just going to bite. But we need to leave as much defense here in Calcutta as we can. We netted a win here, but it was at a very heavy cost. So for our non-combats, we're going to dump a bunch of extra units over here into Buryatia, so we can start making some pushes on the Soviet Far East as well as Yakut. And hopefully start pinching the Russians from the backside here. We've got to evacuate our planes over here. I am bringing these ones down to help defend those bombers as they have a relatively low defense score. But that's all we're going to be able to do on this turn, and that's where we're going to leave things off for today. So again, if you're enjoying this series, please feel free to leave a like, let me know what you think in the comments below, and subscribe if you haven't already. Until then, thanks again for your time, and you have a great rest of your day.